Okay, well, we're back in the studio, and this week I'm going to Tuscany, which is where I'll be next June, and we'll be painting this scene, which is the church in Pienza, one of the little villages we'll be painting in. And I've actually done this for a demonstration, so you'll be able to see how this painting comes together in this travel journal book, which is actually the kind of book we'll be giving away to all the artists on their holiday. And yeah, please leave a comment below, any questions you may have, and who knows, might see you next June.
So here's some samples of the kind of style and subjects we'll be painting in Tuscany. Little squares, the views and so on. Just loose sketches with some watercolour, and don't forget the notes wherever we've been. Okay, for this one, what I generally do is a kind of thumbnail sketch first, and just to kind of get the idea of the proportions and so on, what I'm going to miss out, what I'm going to leave in. As you can see, what I'm going to do is probably miss some of the trees out on the left hand side, so I'm kind of narrowing the format slightly. But it's always good just to do a quick thumbnail of any painting you want to be doing. It just helps you kind of get things in the right place without making a major mistake on a larger piece of paper. So here, for example, so I'm going to keep the cypress trees in, and a little table. Might even put a little character sat in the cafe. I like the view to the left through the trees, the distant hills, and just a hint of something. I've kind of lowered the trees down a little bit as well. And these are the decisions you can make at this stage, and just simplifies things later when you're doing a larger picture. I think the key in this picture is going to be those where the wall leads you into the scene, and you've got those kind of little vertical walls with the greenery on the top. That's going to be good if you can capture that location. That's going to give you a lift. It's that shadow, then there's light and shade. Just brings a little bit of drama to the picture. Okay, so I'm roughly going to often put just a loose kind of eye level horizon line in. Basically above that horizon line, everything is sloping up, and below it, if things are sloping down. It's kind of roughly a 1 point perspective. If you follow the wall through, and these buildings will all kind of vanish to the same point. Let's get the tower in. I generally recommend just kind of drafting the main shapes in first, and then getting into the details. And in this case, it's the steeple. Actually, what I've realised is I've actually started a little bit high, and I'm going to be going out of the picture frame, but I can adjust that. So that's got the kind of main shapes in. I'll get some distant hills in, and then start suggesting where the trees are going to be. I like the way those trees are kind of almost curving over, probably through the wind. But they help to make that kind of little viewing platform stand out. Bit of a negative painting. So it's going to be nice and dark behind the little viewing area. And then you've got a nice cast shadow with some light beyond there. Bell tower. It's got a slight kind of shaping in the actual steeple itself, so there'll be a little bit of light and shade on there. It's actually a beautifully lit scene. I think I chose this because it's got some nice light and shade going on. The shade under the balcony there, shade from the walls and the trees as well. You can see that sun is shining nicely in from the left hand side. I'm using a 2B mechanical pencil, which I'm keeping the style kind of loose. So that's about it. I think we're ready to start painting. I've just mixed up a wash of cerulean blue here, and perhaps sometimes I'll try it out on the corner or on a separate piece of paper just to kind of see if I'm happy with the colour and the strength of the paint. Wash that in, and then I've just with a damp brush I'm just going to soften those edges a little bit. Just in strengthening the colour up slightly with a touch of cobalt blue. And my signature clouds, just wiping, while it's still damp you can clean your brush, and then with a sort of soft dry, almost dry brush, just wipe those clouds away. Just a touch of Payne's grey into the sky mix gives us a nice background colour for the hills. And while it's damp I'm just putting some greens in there. Now some work on the facades. I've kind of flooded on some Naples yellow, and while that is flooding on, I'm adding in some yellow ochre and burnt sienna. Very kind of rich, warm colours. As it's kind of flooding down the page, you can just have fun and add some like I said, the yellow ochres and some burnt siennas. I'm going to come back and put the shadows in later on. And you can kind of paint, as you can see, you can paint over the greenery because that's going to go on later. Shadows, a slightly greyer colour on the steeple. I've just added a touch of Payne's grey to the kind of facade mix and applying those colours. As I said, I'm going to put the shadows in there later on. So at this stage it's just a case of adding a nice range of warm yellows and browns just to get the feeling. Okay, that's got the basics on. I'm going to dry that off with a hairdryer. Of course, if you sat outside in the actual scene, it'd be dry in seconds. Okay, now putting in some deeper tones on the shaded walls. Perhaps just adding a little burnt umber into the mix and carefully laying that in. Just keep an eye on where the sun is catching the walls and leave that area lighter. Add some on the wall itself. I think that's a little bit flat brown. I'm going to have to add some warmer colour into there, I think. But yeah, the nice thing is you can just kind of wipe a little bit of colour away at this point. Just get that reflected light feel. Some shadows under the actual eaves. I've got about a number 12 style brush. You might notice it's a kind of travel brush. I like this series. It's very flexible for taking on a day out like this. Okay, now I'm mixing up some slightly stronger tones. Still working on the facades, just sort of carefully adding the little bit of light and shade here and there. But you can always come back to this then and then to really strengthen it all up. Okay, that's got the main shapes in. I think it's going to be there's some greenery next. Maybe after I've dried it. It's often a mistake people make. They do try and paint continually, but it is important to let those background layers dry before you start. Here, for example, putting the trees in. I've just sort of practiced a little bit on the top left there. It's good to get a kind of upward brush stroke for a cypress tree, and then you've got a slightly more flatter brush style for the regular trees lower down. Quite a sort of deep sap green going in first, and just kind of carefully painting around that sort of observation, I was going to say platform, but that sort of little piece that juts out, and quite deep shadow in there as well. There you can see I've just got a sharp edge on that corner. And yeah, so a little bit of hooker's green going in now, a little bit darker colours. While it's still damp, it just kind of gives you that, that light and shade. So got the main shapes in, and like I said, we're continuing with the sap green and some hooker's green on the greenery, getting a little light and dark in the scene. I quite often enjoy adding a little bit of the hooker's green as it's still damp, and you get a nice kind of blend in there. I'm actually taking some of the colour away with the damp brush just to accentuate that light and dark. Kind of slowly building up those tones, a bit of light and shade. Then come back and look at the overall scene. You'll often find that the watercolours will dry lighter, so I'm just sort of keeping going back in there with a little bit of deeper green. So on the picture you can see it's really dark. Using a slightly smaller brush now. Okay, now I'm just hinting at some stonework. Now that that background's dry, you can just drop in a few little patches of deeper colour, suggesting those stones. I mean, I'm going to probably put some line work in just to sharpen it towards the end. Now I need a finer brush. Okay, yeah, I'm just hinting at the people there looking out of the view. Just a few different colours, nothing too bright. Okay, now just some finer details. Bit of extra shadow. The shop in the cafe. What I'll often do with a cafe scene is, okay, it's very simple here, but I kind of draw the furniture in, the table, the chairs, and then add the figures. It just kind of gives you the structure to add the figures. Often I find it more difficult to just work straight with the figures and the tables. If that makes any sense. Right, I'm happy with that now. So I'll dry that off. Then I can come in with some even finer details. Okay, yeah, what I'm going to do now is just put a little bit of line work in here and there. Just to kind of hint at, I often find adding some lines like this, it's easier than working with a brush to add those kind of shadows and extra little pieces in. Good for kind of paving and stone walls. Just kind of tightens the picture up a little bit. Yes, I guess, you know, you could do a really careful drawing first and then effectively just wash some colours onto your detailed drawing. That's also a technique. I do kind of steer away from pen and ink or adding pen work to a painting. I just feel it can get a little bit intrusive, a little bit too much. Whereas a little sketch with a little with a kind of 2B pencil or maybe even a black crayon, just here and there, pulls it together. A little bit of greenery to make that wall stand out. Actually, now I've got mixed up a little bit of white gouache just for a couple of spots here and there. Maybe I need to look at that bell tower. When I realise that it's actually the view through the bell tower, and you can kind of get the you can see the silhouettes of the bells and so on. Yeah, maybe a few more lines on the buildings themselves. And then just a title and a signature. Yeah, it'd be great to have you along next summer. See you in Tuscany.